Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. And I'm so excited to have with me today Erica Ziel. Today's guest is a deep core specialist. Erica is the founder and creator of Core Athletica, the core rehab program, knocked up fitness prenatal membership, instructional trainer courses, and a host of the Core Connections podcast. She believes that anything you want to improve about your health and your life, you can. Welcome to the show, Erica.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
We have so many amazing topics to talk about today. I can't wait for listeners to be able to hear you dive into these because I think that they're so important, and so many people, so many women don't realize that some of these things exist and that they can achieve everything they want in their health and their life. So give us a little background about you. Tell everyone who you are, other than just our introduction. How did you get here?
Well, I'm a mom of three. My youngest just turned 10 and my oldest is almost 15. So I'm in that age where we're running around, super busy. I'm like taxi mom, Well, long story short, what got me really into movement started when I was 5, because from the age of 5 until I was 17, I had just crazy knee pain all the time. At night I'd be curled up in a ball. It was like, now I look back with all my FDN background, as you would know, like there was a lot of inflammatory pain. We discovered way down the line that I am gluten intolerant or potentially have celiac, but I won't go down that deep rabbit hole of doing the actual test. So I just don't eat it. But finally, when I was 17, we went and saw a specialist at the Mayo Clinic. And, because up until then they had kept saying, oh, it's growing pains. It's growing pains. Well, I stopped growing at 14. So they were finally, when we saw a specialist, they were like, oh, you need to strengthen your legs. And I kid you not, Lisa, it was like the most simple, yet I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like right. That's it. That's all I got to do.
Yeah.
Like it was earth shattering to me. So I was like, okay, great, let's do it. So then it got me in the gym. I was like junior in high school, started weightlifting in the gym, actually learned how to do Olympic lifting. That was my first introduction to weight training and I loved it. So then I went on to study exercise science. And by the time I was 21, I basically had rehabilitated myself. And so it really showed me the power of movement to heal the body personally. I haven't had knee pain since. And then obviously personal training and then finding Pilates. And I actually in college was really interested in pregnancy topics, whether it was exercise in pregnancy. I remember doing a research paper on caffeine in pregnancy and just all this stuff. And I had no desire to be a mom then. I just was really fascinated with the pregnant body, what our pregnant body could do, right? So I actually started working with pregnant women way before I even, again, like I said, I was even interested in having my own babies. I was just fascinated from a movement perspective and what we could do. And so then when I moved out to Southern California and really dove deep into studying Pilates, and then it just kind of morphed from one thing to the next. I'm a very, you are too, Lisa, right? We always have to keep learning more and more and more, right? I'm not just okay knowing what I know today. I'm like, oh, what else can I learn? And so I actually started branching outside of the world of fitness and started really getting deeper into understanding the research that is fascia, that is our pelvic floor, deep core function and all of that. And that was all kind of in the realm of me having my babies and working with so many amazing women, and started really just, through compiling research as well as just my own personal experience and experience with my clients, started really recognizing that I was starting to teach in a way and develop my own unique methods of training where my moms were having such amazing results, right? We didn't have the aches and pains during pregnancy that so many women dealt with. Her recoveries postpartum were just so much better and easier. And then as time went, started discovering that I could help women prepare better for birth because of the way that they were moving or the techniques that they were starting to do during pregnancy. So I just like to, debunk all these myths that are out there about, exercise and pregnancy, from one extreme to the other, because there's very extreme conversations out there. So yeah. And then I think when I was pregnant with my youngest, who, like I said, just turned 10. And I was like, I have to create this DVD, right? I have to get out a prenatal DVD while I'm pregnant, teaching women how to exercise better during pregnancy. Because I saw women doing crunches and all these things that I was like, oh, it was like nails on a chalkboard to me. I'm like, no, you're like damaging your body. Like, stop doing that, And so that was my first like step outside of just doing one-on-one and group training. And then, DVDs have, kind of kaputs. And so now being online and having memberships, and I just love teaching, and I love teaching women that really we can improve anything about our body. We just really have to learn how to do it. And we also have to believe that our body is capable of it too. So
I think that's amazing. And you're so true. And when you said, sometimes we don't know what we're capable of. And I mean, I discovered Olympic weightlifting when I think I was in my 40s. But I did it and but that was what I did. I power lifted, and then I Olympic, you can always accomplish what you want at whatever time in your life, regardless of what you're going through. So let's talk about the importance of that pre and postnatal exercise and some of those little intricate details that you might want to share.
Yeah. So one of the most important things that I talk so much about now is we have to learn how to release and relax through our belly, through our pelvis, through our pelvic floor. Because if we don't, what I find is a lot of women, and especially women who have a history of being athletes or, working out a lot, runners, things like that, they're actually really too tight in their pelvic floor, too tight in their pelvis, too tight in their obliques, and it leads to pelvic floor dysfunction, back pain, diastasis recti. And so those are things that now I talk a lot about. We can work on prevention. Can we prevent everything? There's not 100% preventing, but we can work towards minimizing things. And it also is a process, right? We have to start with where our body is today, and work with our body. So I'm really big on telling all my pregnant ladies, like, look, you're going to gain some weight. Your belly's going to get bigger. Your hips are going to expand. Your ribs are going to expand. But look, when we work with all of that's happening, all of these changes, the postural shifts that are changing, all the hormone changes, like we'll work with those changes and we learn what we can do. You are so much more empowered, so much more confident. And guess what? You're training your fascial layers of your body, your fascial system as well, that things actually come back together quicker postpartum than when we're trying to force things, right? We're trying to force our belly to stay smaller, or hips, or whatever it is. And so that's like a really top thing that I like to teach. I also say that pregnancy is the best time to learn how to effectively strengthen your deep core. And Lisa, when I'm talking about deep core, it really, hang on, I'm going to pause for a second. I'm still getting a little feedback. Are you hearing it on your end at all?
I'm not. Maybe I'm not hearing it at all on my end.
Let me just pull this out.
Okay.
It like distracts your brain, and I'm like,
Yeah, I definitely can't hear anything on my
Okay,
end.
so it's not going to be on the recording. Okay, that was my number one thing. And then I'm like, okay, if I seem distracted, it's because I keep hearing like occasionally like, wait, what was that?
If I would have heard that, I would have went, no, let's stop.
Okay.
We need to fix something. So no, you're all
Okay.
good.
Hopefully we'll be get to reconnect with them. Okay, so we'll start back at the pregnancy is the best time. Okay. So Lisa, I love to always tell my pregnant moms that, pregnancy really is the best time to learn how to effectively strengthen your deep core. So first, let me explain to everyone listening what your deep core is, because so many times, right, we think
like, tell everybody what that is. They're going to be like, what is she talking about?
Yeah. So many times we think the word core means our abs, right? The six-pack muscles, obliques, things like that, which, it's a part of your core. But I go deeper than that. And so when I am talking about deep core, I'm really talking about everything from the base of your pelvis, which is why we end up with so much pelvic floor conversation, the deeper layers of the abdominal wall. We have all these layers of fascia through our abdominal wall. We have all these layers of fascia that, go through our muscles, around our nerves. So up along the deep layers of the spine, around our organs, up the diaphragm, right, which is underneath the base of our ribs, the intercostal muscles. Like basically it's everything that's really deeper than just like the outer surface muscles of our core that goes from our pelvis all the way up underneath our shoulders. So as you can imagine, breath plays a really, really, really huge role in this. We can do all the movement in the world, ladies, but if we aren't tapping into our breath to activate our deep core, we are missing a huge piece and we'll only get so far. And this is why when I say like we have to work with our body and we can't force it, this is a huge piece. So pregnancy is the best time to learn how to strengthen these deep core muscles, but fascia, because we have a baby inside of our belly that gives us that physical tactile feedback. And I know like anyone here is listening that ever is worked with someone, whether it's, getting massage or a personal trainer or Pilates or going to yoga, and you have your instructor that lightly touches you on a part of your body, right? And it instantly your brain is like, oh, okay, now I know where you want me to like focus, right? Well, the deep layers of the core, no one can get inside of there very easily, right? So when we have a baby inside of our belly, it gives us tactile feedback. And so now the brain can be like, oh, I can feel more internally now. But in order to actually feel more, we actually have to learn to activate less. And so this is where we have to get outside of, for those of you that do Olympic lifting, do intense things, do running, it's a lot of brain training. I've realized now a lot of what I teach about movement is brain training. It's training our brain and our muscular system and our fascial system, how to really work together. And in order to get to the deeper layers, we have to be more gentle with our body. We have to initiate movement with our breath. And I know a lot of women that I first start working with will say, Erica, I can't breathe past my chest. Okay, well, we have to start there. We all have to start where we are, because how are we going to get to where we want to go if we don't just start with where we are and like acknowledge like, hey, that's okay. It's okay that I'm not where I want to be. That's the whole point. If you want to get there, we have to recognize like, I'm here to be with my body and learn the new skills. And we have to recognize we have to stop fighting that. We have to stop beating up our body and like, we have to be kind to ourselves when we're learning new things.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk just a little bit more with regards to the pelvic floor, because that has a huge overall effect on health. And I think that many people don't even know what it is. They don't even understand what that, what that can do to their health. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So your pelvic floor, which is at the base of your pelvis. So ladies, if you're sitting right now, right, make sure your legs are uncrossed. And I want you to just kind of rock on your pelvis, like rock forward to the pubic bone, rock back to your tailbone. And then like you can go like side to side. Those are your sits bones. Even if you don't fully feel them, they are there. And those kind of make a diamond shape. So I like to like hold my fingers up, point your fingers together, thumbs together, makes this like diamond. So if we can kind of visualize the base of our pelvic floor is a diamond shape. It's pretty large. It might be thin muscularly, but we have these layers of fascia that go through our muscles, over our muscles, and then from our pelvic floor up to help hold our organs. It's all fascial tissue there, right? So if we think of our pelvic floor as that diamond shape and not just a quarter size, a lot of women think, like we've been taught to do Kegels or Kegels, however you want to say it, right? That it's only the size of like a quarter, and we're taught to do it to activate our pelvic floor, to do Kegels and stop the flow of urine, which ladies, I'll tell you, please stop doing that. That's not effective. It could potentially lead to UTIs. Anyone who's had UTIs knows you do not want those. They are horrendous. And so instead, what I want, and I teach women to think about their pelvic floor as their pelvic floor, not about Kegels. Okay, I'm going to work on strengthening my pelvic floor, and think of it that way. And it's the base of your core, because we even know with science today, research that's out there that says, okay, we can work our pelvic floor independently, yes, but for optimal, which is what I'm all about, is optimal health, optimal function, we have to learn how to activate our pelvic floor with our deep core. We also then have to understand what's going on with our pelvis and our hips and our inner thighs and our hamstrings, because if we're really tight on, say, the right side of our hip or our right inner thigh or inner hamstring is really restricted because we're dominant on that side, right? Most people have one side that they're dominant on. Well, that can contribute to your pelvic floor. And likely you are too tight on the right side of your pelvic floor. You might be also too tight on the left, or maybe your left is too weak, and we have imbalances. So we have to start looking at the body, one as a whole, but also understanding how it all works together. And this is why I love working with moms. I love working with women during pregnancy because there's so many changes going on that when we learn to work with these changes, we can actually create so much new balance to the body because of the relaxin hormones. So if you're really tight in your pelvis, it might be a great opportunity to actually learn how to release that, but also then learn to strengthen, because we cannot just stretch. When I say release, I teach some releasing with like breath work. So it's good relaxation. But most of what I'm teaching when we're wanting to lengthen and create more space through the body is we're doing it with light activation, because that's what fascia likes, because fascia will form in the way that we move. So ladies, a good example is posture, right? If we're sitting rounded all the time forward, that's where our fascia is going to get tight like that. So it's the same thing with our pelvis, right? So when we have to start to understand that, how this is all working together, then we can start to see amazing results when we start to change things, improve things.
And such a good point with regards to posture, because think about, we're at a desk, right? So many times you see people at a desk, and for those of you watching on YouTube, right, we're hunched over, we're typing, right? Rather than opening up the chest and sitting back and typing and again, I find that may be affecting people, not going too far down a rabbit hole off topic, but because a lot of people are working at home, they don't have a proper desk ergonomic setup in their office, right? So just things like that. But again, very, very important. And so let's talk a little bit about some prenatal exercises to prepare the body for actually, having the baby. What are some of those that can be really effective and that you utilize with clients?
Yeah. So in general, I'm all about just encouraging her to stay active daily, right? So many times we could think, oh gosh, if we're not working out super intense or lifting heavy, then it's not effective. That is absolutely not true. Time and time again, I've been doing this for like 20 years now. And I have helped so many pregnant women who say before pregnancy, didn't have a structured exercise routine, right? They were maybe more sedentary, maybe they walked a little bit, right? And I've been able to get her to be a lot stronger during pregnancy, but we're not lifting heavy. We're not doing CrossFit. We're not doing barbell training. It's really about being more connected with our body. And because I teach so much about being fascially strong, which is where we're lengthening a lot and we're being connected versus going into deep stretching. I don't like deep stretching ever. And I really don't like it during pregnancy. So that's just something to think of. But things specifically that can help in preparation for birth. Number one is relaxing. I love doing I call it just like a belly release. If you have an exercise ball, or you can do it at the edge of a couch, and just opening your knees wide and just kind of hanging out over the ball, right? Obviously, if you're farther along in pregnancy, giving your belly plenty of room and just relaxing through your pelvis, breathing into your belly, breathing all the way into your pelvis. Because so many times we're not thinking about, we actually need to relax our hips and the hip bones. Like we can think about opening the pelvic floor, but that's only a part of it. Our hips actually have to expand in order to birth a baby vaginally, right? I also find squats. Squats are a great exercise. And I find my moms, even at like 36, 38, 40 weeks pregnant, she's like, Erica, I'm still doing my squats because it keeps my SI joint or my SI pain away. And so many times we have to stretch to keep the pain away. Ladies, all that stretching is actually, I find most of the time, is contributing to pain because we need to create stability. So there's this balance of like doing strength exercises, and most of the time it's unweighted. You don't need weight. You really don't, to keep those good, strong connections in the right way. Those squats are great. If women feel fine on their back, I love, say, doing hip rolls, right? Think of like a bridge position, but instead of just bridging your booty up and down, articulating your spine. So I teach a ton of articulation because we want to keep that mobility in our spine, keeps her core the right kind of strong, as well as, then it helps keep the back pain away, right? And then I'm a big one on like just coaching her on visualizing what she does want. I know a lot of moms, especially first-time moms, get really like, oh my gosh, what if it doesn't go the way that I plan? And I am always, coaching my ladies to be like, okay, well, we need to go through all the scenarios, even if you don't want a cesarean, it needs to be in one of your plans, even if it's the last one. So you've mentally thought through it. Here's the deal. If you've done all the prep work, you've done the deep core strengthening, the relaxing, you've trained your body. The cool thing is I even see when our moms do have cesareans, planned or unplanned, that we hear all the time from the OB. They're like, wait, what were you doing? Because they can see that the tissue is just so much nicer. Like their cut is cleaner, and then it heals. Like this blows my mind. Because when I first started hearing this, I was like, really? But then time and time again, it happens. And it's amazing because we even have our cesarean moms who typically are kind of out for the count for several weeks, right? And in a lot of pain. I get a lot of my cesarean moms that come back and they're like week 1 or 2. And she's like, one, I didn't either need no pain meds, or I needed very little. And now I'm like 2 weeks postpartum. And I know you tell me I can't go back into like my exercise just yet, but I want to do something. Like I have to do something because she feels so good. And like, that is my dream. That's what I want from all moms, is to feel like there is this process we go through with birth. But I think so many times we don't connect what we're doing during pregnancy and our workouts and breath work, that it actually can have a profound effect on us, on our mental health, how our birth can actually go. There's no guarantees, but hey, if you do the prep work, you're better prepared, right? At the end of the day. Then it really, really can relay to your postpartum recovery. And that is a dream of mine. It's just help as many women as possible to have an easier recovery. Because if you've got more than one, you're chasing a toddler and you're trying to recover and you're trying to breastfeed and you're tired and you're doing all these things. So if we can kind of check one of these boxes where your body is healing better, you've learned these techniques, and I teach you what to do soon postpartum, because we're not exercising, but there's a lot you can do, very gentle breath work. Because again, we're moving. We're not moving, ladies, right? As moms. So I think that's a big notion when we say like, oh, well, you can't do anything for 6 weeks. I'm like, yeah, don't go to the gym and start lifting. And sure as heck, don't even think about running for quite a while. But there's a lot you can do that's super gentle and healing and really rehabilitative for your body. So we have to think about this whole process differently, I feel like, because it's really this whole, we go from like, okay, we got to stay active during pregnancy so we don't gain the baby weight. And then we got to get our body back soon postpartum. And I'm like, you guys got to throw all those thoughts out the window, because that actually works against you. And it's like this work with our body, and then it actually comes back quicker postpartum.
Yeah. Well, and the last part that you mentioned there with regards to I have to keep moving and then I want to lose this and that and whatever, that's really stressful.
Oh, so, absolutely.
So mentally, they're putting so much stress on themselves when they should be going through this process, like you said, and embracing that journey and being able to do some of those more healing things along the way and those more gentle exercises. I think that's amazing. And so now let's talk about, post baby body, you talked about a little bit with regards to the healing. And so where can we go a little bit more deeper into that deep core, right, that you've identified, and how do we care for that?
So, well, if we kind of start from that early postpartum, right, after having a baby, and we'll talk briefly, because I know there's probably a lot of ladies listening that are like, well, I'm way past having babies. Okay, well, we'll get there.
We're on our way.
So really, after initially having a baby, it really is all like about healing your body. And I think we have to take this, when we take this healing approach, okay, that's number one. But ladies, you have to recognize that until about 6 months postpartum, you still have relaxin in your body. So this is where I have to have you hold the brakes, put those brakes on. That's why I created my core rehab program. It gives women something to follow specifically so that we're moving. And you're doing your movement, because I'm sure a lot of ladies listening are like we got to just move, right? And moving is meditation for so many of us, right? It's healing. We got to be doing the right kind of movement and the right kind of techniques. And if we go too hard too soon postpartum, it causes, for a lot of women, it causes a lot of dysfunction. This is when we start to see pelvic organ prolapsing happen, right? Like uterus can start to slide out from the vaginal opening, and that's preventable, ladies. That's why I talk about it. I don't ever say it to scare anybody, but women don't realize it can happen to them until it happens to them, right? So incontinence, right? The peeing of your pants, that's a sign. That's a first sign, ladies, that we need to relook at what we're doing, how we're activating our core, what we're doing for our exercise routine. And then again, if we go too hard too soon, it can contribute or create diastasis when maybe at 10 weeks postpartum, you didn't have it. Because I hear so many women, especially runners, people that do high intensity workout, like they want to get back to that running because it's just, they have to, right? And if you run too soon, ladies, it can set you back for the rest of your, well, not life, but it can set you back for a really long time and cause dysfunction that you otherwise didn't even have to create, right? So that's why I get really big on being like, okay, please listen to your body. Let's please take the time. So even if it takes you longer postpartum to get back into your normal exercise routine, I just want you to know that for long-term health, that is ideal. That is ideal. I talked so many women back from like, please just trust me. You have to not run for a while. Work through the program. We'll get you there. I will get you back into running and you will be so grateful you waited. And I love a story of one of my moms who had 5 babies. And she was like, okay, Erica, this is really hard for me not to run, right? Not hard. And she's like, I'm going to trust you. And I'm going to just keep working on strengthening in the correct way. And then, and then down the road, I don't remember how far along she was, but, probably that at least six months postpartum. And she started slowly working back into her runs. And as she was slowly over time getting back into her runs, she reached out one day and she was like, Erica, not only am I running without any dysfunction, I'm not peeing my pants, I have no pain. She's like, I'm running faster now after 5 babies than I was before having babies.
Wow, that's incredible. Oh my goodness, that's an amazing story.
And I hear stories similar to that time and time again. We have to hold our horses when it comes back to getting into our movement. And part of it is this relaxin we have. We don't realize that it makes everything more loosey-goosey. And I know some women will say they feel tighter. And actually that was always me. But I believe, there's no research, I haven't found out there, but my belief, just knowing as much about the body as I do, that it's the body's protection mechanism. You actually get tighter to hold the loosey-goosiness, right? So some women will feel a lot more flexible, others won't. Again, work with that. Don't force the stretching. But then for those of you that maybe it's been a couple years, maybe it's been 10 years, 20 years, 30 years even, right? Is it ever too late to work on healing your body after having babies? The answer is no. Can it take a little longer? Absolutely, right? Depends on how long we've had these habits. So that's a lot of what we have to come in and do is we're retraining our body how to move, how to breathe, how to connect with our pelvic floor in a way that if you've never learned this stuff, it's all brand new. And so we have to, this is where we have to get our ego, to kind of set the ego to the side and be like, okay, we're coming at this and we want to learn something completely new about my body. And if you really want to heal and you want to get out of dysfunction, it's possible. It is possible time and time and time again. We have so many testimonials of the women that, thought that they were just going to have to deal with the pain the rest of their life because they probably had a medical professional tell them, oh, you're just going to have to deal with that, or you're going to have surgery. And I cannot tell you the amount of women that our paths have crossed. And she was like, Erica, your program and what you teach just saved me. Didn't have to have surgery. Wow. Got her back to moving and doing the things in life that she loves. And that's my goal, right? I want women to be able to enjoy their life with their kids, with their grandkids. And, because we know as we age, and we don't think about this so much when we're younger, but as we age, when our mobility declines, so does our health. And so it's I'm really, really, really big. You don't have to go hard. I mean, it's just a slow and steady and just movement every day. It can be gentle. It doesn't have to be a lot, but something daily, and learning how to hold your body throughout your day, learning how to carry your groceries, learning how to walk. It's amazing, Lisa, the amount of women. I have a walking tutorial that I teach and they're like, Erica, I've been walking wrong my whole life.
You're like, how did I not know this before?
Yeah, exactly. So, and I always encourage ladies, I'm like, please start teaching this stuff to your teenage girls. When you have a teenage daughter, start teaching her how to do the stuff that you're really need to do. Start teaching her how to do squats correctly and how to walk and how to run. And, because that's kind of a new passion of mine. Well, I always wanted to actually help more teens. And then I got into I loved prenatal, but I'm having a teenager myself now. And I see so much dysfunction. Her friends are always injured. And it's just because of the training that, the high school coaches, they don't have this kind of background.
Right. It's true. So it's true. You may get the odd one that really has a deep background, but a lot of them, again, they're just volunteering or what have you, or they played years ago, right? And it is so important for our teens with regards to that type of movement and understanding, because even going into a gym, just as well as I do, you go into the gym, especially if it's, whatever gym it is, and you see people squatting or lunging and you're just like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Because, and they're, 20 something, and you think, oh my God, by the time you're my age, what are you going to be doing? Because you've been doing it wrong for, 30 years or whatever. Right. Yep. So I always pay attention to that. I never correct anybody unless they ask, but I always do pay attention, and I wonder, I hope that they learn that movement better and are able to move better. But that's a great point. And so you talked a little bit about, and I want to finish with this. You talked a little bit about healing incontinence, because again, so many women, especially after childbirth and even the years after that, let's talk about how to heal that, or some of the steps you can take. And then also, women who've had children who are now, 10 or 12, and they're still having some of these problems, they have the opportunity to be able to fix some of these things too, even though it's been a while.
Absolutely. It really is never too late, especially if you're willing to learn more about your body. Really, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. So, incontinence, whether it's pre-pregnancy, during pregnancy, after having babies, the philosophy is really the same. It's learning how to properly strengthen your deep core, which is what I teach. It can seem simple, but it can be challenging for the body to learn, because again, we're creating new wiring of the brain. So if we can start to think of things as like, oh, it's not that your body isn't getting it. It's that you have to retrain the thought processes. So it's really retraining your brain how to connect with your pelvic floor and your deep core. So that I feel like when I tell women that, I want that to just give them that extra piece of like encouragement of like, it's okay that you don't understand it right away. Right. Yeah. So learning how to release and relax, like I talked about for pregnancy, that's also important to do outside of being pregnant, because if you're really tight. So that's one thing. I do also, Lisa, have a free pelvic floor guide that I'd love to send out to your audience. So it's just a 1-page, like kind of written out in writing of the cueing that I would use. And so again, like I said, ladies, just if you don't get it for 10th time, just keep practicing, keep practicing. The thing is, like I mentioned at the very beginning, with core function, pelvic floor function, we also have to address what's going on with the rest of our body. So posture, ladies, plays a role. You need to really start paying attention to your posture. And it's not just about jamming those shoulders back. I actually say, please don't jam your shoulders back. Please instead just think about lengthening tall from the pelvis all the way to the top of your head. Your mid back will actually start to work. A lot of women, I find, the mid back has kind of shut off over the years. They get really tight in the traps. So just starting to think about opening that chest a little bit and lengthening upward, and your mid back will start to fire kind of like along your bra line area. And that in itself can change your life, just starting to stand and sit taller. But then we also have to address what's going on with our pelvis. So if any of you notice you're really restricted, one side of your hip or your leg, like start paying attention to that. So work in some, I love teaching squats in different positions and in a really slow, like small range of motion, because it gives you a lot of feedback of what's going on with your pelvis. Because when you take the weight away and you slow it down and I make you pulse through like a small range of motion, you'll start to see, oh my gosh, I'm using my hip flexor on the right side or my inner line because I'm so restricted, and my femur maybe wants to rotate inward, right? So a lot of women tend to have their femurs, their thighs tend to roll in, right? We don't have as good of stability on the lateral stabilizers, like the outer side of our hips. And so if we've got a lot of this, oppositional movement happening where one side's really tight internal, maybe the other side's overcompensating, that can affect your pelvic floor function. So this is why I say and I always encourage, go to a pelvic floor physical therapist, go to someone who can do internal work. I think that can be great. That can be a piece of the puzzle. I don't encourage it as just to rely on completely. Because if they're just looking at pelvic floor function and we're not addressing how you're squatting when you go to the gym, right? All those other things, we may be missing a big component, because the way you're squatting could actually be a big contributing piece to the pelvic floor dysfunction, right? So it's like breaking things down and looking at it as a whole. I know people will ask me, Erica, wait, because a lot of what I teach talk about is core, right? And they're like, are you going to strengthen my legs too? I'm like, absolutely. It's part of the picture.
The whole package. Yes. The whole thing has to come together.
Yeah. And I will say with women in particular, I find we need to work on hamstring strength. Weak hamstrings can contribute to pelvic floor dysfunction because your pelvis isn't, you're probably not able to stabilize your pelvis in the right spot if you have weak hamstrings.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I can share from my own personal experience as well, even just, working on the computer so much now, I've noticed that my psoas is so tight on one side, and I know I have to start working on that more. Just because, again, when you're sitting at a desk, you're shortening, you're in that position where they're getting shorter. And as soon as you go to stretch, all of a sudden they're tight. And so we have to pay attention again to the whole body is important because everything's interconnected. I learned that when I did my yoga tune-up certification, right? Everything is interconnected. There's nothing that stands alone that doesn't affect something else. And when I have an athlete come to me and say, oh, my elbow, I have a problem with my elbow. Maybe it's tennis elbow. I'm like, well, what about your shoulder? What about your trap? What about your neck? What about your back? Because it could be pulling from somewhere else that's affecting your elbow. And so important that you take that whole holistic approach to that type of exercise.
Yeah. Most people's pain is not actually like where you feel pain, ladies, is not actually where it's caused from most of the time. That's what I find. Like low back pain, when someone comes to me, whether it's one-on-one or online, right? It's like, okay, well, we've been focusing too much on the low back, right? You go to someone to fix your low back and it's like, it kind of gets better, but doesn't really get better. It's because, well, part of it is they're not addressing pelvic positioning. They're not addressing that psoas line, and that psoas line is huge for opening up. I teach a really gentle like ball release with the psoas, which is amazing. And it's amazing the amount of times I have clients do that. And I'm like, do more of this. And it's like, boom, that back pain just like goes away. It's like, it's just like magic. It's so amazing.
I couldn't agree with you more. I would say almost 9.5 times out of 10, wherever your symptom is not where it's being originated when you have pain in the body, almost every time. Yeah. And that gets confusing for people because they're like, but it's here. I know that, but it's coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, that was fantastic. Such great information. And so, thank you for sharing that document. We will have a link to that in the description. So make sure you take a look and make sure you take advantage of that and download that, because I think, again, whether you are pregnant now, whether you're thinking about becoming pregnant, whether you're, just had a baby, or if it's been 10 years, I think that everybody in a position where they're not performing and as healthy as they'd like to be can definitely benefit from what Erica is teaching. And so thank you so much, Erica, again, for joining us. And for those of you watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to my channel. There's a brand new episode every 2 weeks. Give this episode a thumbs up. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast host, make sure you give this episode a like, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Lisa.